kind of look like a mess today, but we're getting started on this surface grinder build. So I've got 10-inch, 1.5-inch angle. This is 1.25-inch angle, and it's been ground down on the edges to fit tight. And we're fixing to weld this up. What I'm using for the column to travel up and down is 1-inch square tubing. It's also cut 10 inches long. And we'll start here, and I'll get back to you as I progress. Alright, so basically here's where we're at. We've got our outside tube made, the 1.5-inch and the 1.25-inch angle. The way we get to this, I put the 1.5-inch in there. I will take a piece of the 1-inch stock that's going to go through the center. And basically wrap it in paper, one sheet, long ways. Set that in the 1.5-inch, then clamp the 1.25-inch over it and weld them up. That way you get a nice tight fit. Once you drive the 1-inch out, you've got about 2 sheets of paper thickness for play. The next thing we will be doing is, that's the actual one that goes in there. We'll make sure it's not got no burrs. We'll get our nut welded in the top of it. Then we'll weld the top of the column in. So this is actually going to travel up and down inside. This will have the platform welded to it with the surface grinding attachment. The top part of this piece will be your adjustment nut, and this will actually be welded to go into the grinder. So this will set in the grinder, and then you've got travel up and down, and we're going to make it where it's adjustable angle on the end. And we'll just kind of step by step as I go through the process. Okay, so I used 1/2-inch all thread, put the nut on the end, run it all the way through. I take this up to where it would tape would just fit inside the hole. That's going to give me a nice centered fit. Then I'm going to run this nut down, and then I will weld it in. That way the bottom stays centered, and this is going to stay centered all the way through the top piece. And we'll get back when I get to that. Alright, so what I've got going, I got nut welded on. You can see the tape down in there. That's holding everything centered. We're going to slide this inside our column. That keeps everything centered as you go to weld the washers on. I'm probably going to do 2 washers thick. That way I don't blow through them. And once we get the washers welded on, we'll take that out, take it all apart, and then clean everything up. Run it back through, put a nut on this. Of course, we'll trim our all thread off. Once we get the nut on, we'll be able to run it up and down with the nut. Okay, I've backed my all thread out. I cut it off flush. I run about 3.5–4 inches back through. Run the nut down there. I want to leave enough to go through this and have a couple of nuts on the end. So what we're basically going to do, we're going to weld this nut in place onto the all thread. This nut's welded onto the 1-inch square tubing. That will keep this from going up and draw that up and down once you get your 2 nuts on top. So we're going to weld this, we'll stick it through, we'll put the nuts on, and then I'll come back and show you how it works. Alright, so this is the internal part, working part. This is actually what goes inside of this piece. So the way this works, this nut's welded on. Then there's a nut welded to this bottom shaft. So this shaft moves in and out. Once we get that in here, this will spin through and through and raise and lower that because there's a nut on top and it can't go anywhere. Well, here's what we've got. Now we got that in there, one washer, and put a nut on. Now we don't want this solid, we just want it where there's not a whole lot of play in there. Then we're going to do a lock washer, another nut, and I am going to set the camera down while I cinch this up. Once I get all that together, it's kind of tight. So now we will get some lube up in there, maybe. Now it's all broke loose. You can pretty much spin it by hand. Little bit of play, not much. Once you lock this down, there will be no play in that shaft whatsoever. Alright, so the next thing is going to be setting this up. Let's give you a good view of how I'm actually setting this up over here. Put my shaft in there. That is my tool arm. "90-degree magnet. set. I want it a little further down. Don't want enough room in here to put a piece of 1/2 inch square stock. To make sure that well's good and solid. Now what I'm going to do is square this up with the machine. 90 degrees. That needs to go this way. That needs to go that way. If you want to get real precise, you can run a level down through there and square everything off of the level. So I'm at 89.9 here. Pretty well lined up on here. Make sure everything still looks good. Everything still looks good. So now what I'm going to do is loosen this off, maybe loosen that bottom off. We're going to slide it out. Before I get on, tack this side. We're going to move everything back to the bench. So what I want to do, this adds stability. I'll set this in here. So here's the setup on my hinges. I've got my little rotary table. It's just a cheapo off Amazon. And we are milling out a slot. So this is going to set. I'm going to weld a block on here, backside, drill and tap. Of course I will cut these across here to make them where they won't get into the wheel. But then I'll be able to adjust the tilt of the surface grinding attachment. So basically what we've got done, we've got the stop. This locks this arm into place. Once I got all this on, this weld, the tower welded up on it, I locked this down and actually got this inside piece set 90 degrees once it's locked. That way everything's in line. We will get the slide mechanism put on with the hinges and get everything finished up. I'll kind of walk through it, but that's where we're at. Alright, so what we got is 1-inch square stock. This piece is 4 inches. I've welded 2 little cut clips on there. I want them pretty even because I'm going to do the adjustment. So I'm going to drill and tap the ends. So once you get these welded together, I'll go to the milling machine, drill them and tap them. And then it will get welded on that. And we'll start there when we get to that point. Okay, so this is the piece I've just welded up. What I've done is drilled and tapped 2 holes. In the end. So this will be adjustable. Angle wise. So this is the dog bone. This will weld onto this, the angle I want. Then I'll have adjustable to tilt my table and get it running perfect with the wheel. So once the dog bone's on, keep calling dog bone, it's more like a C. Once I get the C welded on, get the holes drilled on the other end, that will give me an adjustable angle this way with the wheel, so I can get it running perfect with that wheel. Alright, so I got the C welded on. That's how that C sits on there. Welded all the way around. These are my tilt brackets. Got them drilled and tapped. Went ahead and welded the rod on. So now what I've got is this is going to set solid, and that's going to tilt. The next thing will be is pulling these bolts out, both sides, putting this in the vise, drilling for the linear slide. I'll drill, molt it on, and then we're going to have to lay out a pattern for the top plate on the linear slide, and then we'll get the magnets on it and get it all dialed in and ready to go. Okay, so here we go. This is almost finished product. Still needs to be painted. Up and down adjustment, lock down for the this locks everything down where when you raise and lower it to lock everything into place and make everything good and stiff, so you don't have any wiggle or play in your surface grinder. We've got the linear rail mounted. So we just need to add magnets. I've already put it on the grinder. Got everything leveled out perfect. So the next deal is to add a handle. We'll run a piece of 1/2-inch square stock under here out for handle. And then we are going to cut these Harbor Freight magnets out of their casing, and we're going to put epoxy on there for a little extra holding power. My plan is to mount 4 of these magnets. They're going to be hanging over about 1.5 inches, 2 inches on each end. Once I get them all glued down and mounted, then I'll put it on there, and I will actually run them all down even on the surface grinder. And it'll be ready to use as soon as I get it all painted up nice and pretty.